Hello again. I'm back with another clock to repair. This one is a Telechron, and I found it at one of the local thrift stores. It was priced at $10, and I could tell that it was a pretty old clock. I just didn't know if it worked or not, but I purchased it. I've already plugged it in and confirmed that it doesn't run. I'll give a little history of the Telechron clocks. It was the Warren Telechron Company. It was founded in 1912 by Henry Warren. And in 1917, General Electric acquired a financial interest in it. And initially, the clocks just read Telechron on the dial, as this one does. But it wasn't until 1930 or 31 that General Electric was printed on the dial with the word Telechron on the bottom. By the mid-30s, Telechron was dropped from the dial altogether, and the clocks just read General Electric. I found this one in my Telechron book, Electrifying Time, Telechron and GE Clocks, 1925 to 1955. It is the Duncan, which was made from 1928 to 1931. They sold over 8,000 of them, and it's in a mahogany case. We're looking at a 92 to 95-year-old clock. Clocks as old as this are usually powered by an oil-filled rotor, and there's a wire-wrapped coil which generates the magnetic field. And what I like to do is to test the circuitry that it's intact. And to do that, I use an ohm meter, and I just have to touch the leads to the end of the power cord. And if you get numbers flashing on here, it tells you that the circuits are intact, the wiring is intact. Okay, numbers are flashing, so this clock, therefore, it should be repairable. The first thing I want to do is turn it over, and I'm going to look to remove the whole mechanism from the case. Looks like 3 screws or nuts are holding this plate on, so let me undo those. There's one. 2, and okay, let's lift up this little plate here. And in the case, I think she's just going to come right out. There we go. Let's take a closer look at this. Okay, this looks familiar to me. I believe I've repaired an earlier Telechron clock like this. And this is the rotor. I believe it's the B-type rotor. And whether it's not running because the oil in here got a little sludgy, or if the gears in here are kind of gunked up with dirt, or a combination of the two, I won't know until I take it apart. And although I usually don't like to repair the same clock twice in one of my videos, the fact that the last Telechron, the rotor was actually working once I put a plug on the power cord, but this one is not. So anyway, I'll take a closer look and figure out which way I want to approach it as far as taking it apart. Okay, this wire is actually a plug. This should be able to come out of here. There we go. Okay, we can put the wire aside. And there's 3 nuts holding this plate on. But first I have to remove the set knob. To do that, I need my vice grip. Okay, I'm going to remove these 3, and I'll do that and then return to show you how I take the plate off. I've removed the 3 nuts from here, and what I'm noticing is that I also have to remove these 2 screws in order to get this plate off. They are screwed down into these posts that are over here. But underneath the plate are 3 more nuts on this side of the stem. And what they serve to do is hold this plate in the right position, so when it's in the case, it's not too loose by being too far out or too far in, too tight a fit. So I don't want to move these at all. So to prevent that from happening, I'm just going to put a little piece of tape right up by the nut here so it doesn't get spun around once I take it apart. Put one there. And there. Come on. And here. Okay. Now I can remove these. Little information plate here, and let's see what happens when I try to lift this off. Oh, something fell out. Let's see where that came from. Okay, I see that. Okay, what fell off, this, which went over here. Okay, here's the rotor. Let's take these off of here. And this whole thing is the coil. See if I can lift this up out of here. Well, that's a really tight fit. I'm not going to force it. Let me just work on it a bit more. And once I have it off, then I'll continue. One thing I know about this kind of a rotor is that instead of it having a gear that turns another gear, which turns the hands, the center of this is actually attached to the second hand. And trying to force this off, I could torque or damage that a little bit. So rather than do that, I'm going to look to remove the hands from the front before I look to get to remove the whole coil and rotor. So let's see how that's going to work. Okay, here's the glass. Have to be careful and not torque this too much. I don't want these wires coming out of the coil here to break off. Okay, let me take a closer look to see if this is either a friction grip, it'll just pop off, or if it's threaded. But I want to know exactly how it's removed before I try to force it. Actually, what I recall is that because this fits directly over a stem that comes out of the rotor, there's sort of a sleeve that fits right over that. I should be able to just lift this straight up and out of here. So let's see how that works. Yeah, there we go. And it looks like there's a nut holding the minute hand. See how easy that works. it's really tight, and I don't want to take a chance on bending these hands. They're very delicate. I may have to put a drop of WD-40 around here, let it soak in to loosen it a bit. So let me do that. I just spray some in a little cap that I have. And then just brush a little bit of it around the nut that's here. Okay, let that penetrate for a few minutes, and then when I come back, we'll see if I can loosen that. Okay, it's been a few minutes. Let me give it a try. I think I got it. That's a bit tight. Let's see if I can pry it off. And it looks like I'm going to have to use a bit of the WD-40 on this too. And I'll give that a few minutes as well. It's been a few minutes, but one thing I noticed as I started to move this, once I got the second hand out, that freed up the rotor, and it pretty much just slid right out of the back here. So I really don't have to knock myself out at the moment trying to get the hour hand off. So I'll come back to that. And what I want to check next is try to figure out why the rotor is not working. Okay. Now there should be a date code stamped on here, which will give me a more accurate idea of just how old this is. Let me see if I can clean this off a bit and read the writing on here. I've cleaned it up, and what I can read here, it says B2, it's a B rotor, 60 cycles, 1 RPM, which makes sense because if the second hand fit in here, it goes around 1 revolution per minute. And the date code reads 429. So I think it's pretty safe to say that this clock was manufactured in 1929. The next thing I want to do is place this back into a coil and see if it works. Now I could either reattach the power cord to this, or what's easier for me is I have another coil that I kind of use to test out these rotors. Let me plug this in. And turn it on. And I don't know if you can see it, but I can see that it's not moving. I can feel the kind of magnetic field going through here. It's kind of buzzing, but so the next step is going to be to figure out how to open this up, because I have to clean out all the old gunked up oil that's in here. That's probably what's making this a frozen rotor. But before I do that, I really want to research them a little bit more to figure out a safe way to get in it, whether I have to drill a hole somewhere, or I do see what looks to be a bit of solder here. It might be a solder plug. Maybe I can melt this out. There might be an opening. But let me do some work figuring that out, and once I know how I'm going to approach it, I will continue. Okay, I found the steps on how to open one of these up and clean it and lubricate it, but the tools required for that, you'd have to have a metal shop, and that's beyond my abilities. I have seen a few of these offered for sale. One was advertised as being completely repaired and refurbished, and the asking price was $150. And I found another one that was listed as being untested for $50. Almost makes me think I could offer to sell this one as untested for $50. That's just crazy. So what I'm going to do first is look to remove the solder from here. And hopefully there'll be an opening. So let me set up and we'll give that a shot. I'll try to show this. If it starts taking too long, I'll just finish it on my own. Wow, look at that. Let me show you what I got here. That's perfect. Definitely a little hole right there, which means I should be easily able to get what I end up using is liquid wrench. I'll fill it up with that and let it soak for 24 hours and then shake out the liquid wrench and replace it with just regular 3-in-1 oil and let that sit for 24 hours. And then when that's removed, I fill it up with a little bit of synthetic clock oil, and odds are that it will get the rotor working. So I'm going to continue on my own now. Let me just remove the rest of the solder here. I'm ready to fill it with my liquid wrench. I want to make sure I can get in as much as I possibly can. Okay, that looks pretty full. Yep, okay. So I'm going to let this sit now for 24 hours. And what's interesting is that this is only the second B-type rotor I've worked on. And the first one, it was a Telechron Oxford clock. That rotor was working. And I don't recall if it had a solder plug on it. So I went back and looked at my old video, and I really couldn't see any solder on it. So I'm suspecting that this may have been serviced before. Someone might have drilled a hole to do just sort of what I'm doing now and then sealed it up with the solder. We'll see if I'm successful with this. Apparently it must have worked the first time around. And if it does work, this is a good technique on how to unfreeze the B-type rotors, because the part that you have to be careful of is when you go to drill a hole, you really don't know where the gears are. And if you hit the wrong spot, you will damage it, and then you won't be able to repair it at all. Anyway, I'm going to give this 24 hours, then I'll come back, shake it out, and replace it with my 3-in-1 oil. Okay, it's been about a day. What I want to do now is just shake out all of the liquid wrench from here. See, a lot of it seems to have leaked out of this side. And then once I get as much of it out as I can, I'm just going to let it sit at least for another several hours to try to drain out as much of it as possible. And then I'll fill it up again with the this time with the 3-in-1 oil. It's been quite a few hours, and it looks as if most, if not all, of the liquid wrench is out of here. Same thing now with the 3-in-1 oil. Okay, and we're going to give this another day to soak. Okay, it's been about a day. Now I'm going to drain out of here all of that 3-in-1 oil. And this will take a while. The old sludgy oil kind of turns green. And I'll continue to work on this until it's fully drained, and then I get to put in a bit of the synthetic clock oil. So that'll take a while. Let me work on that, and then we'll continue. It looks as if all the oil has drained out of here. So what I want to do next is put a bit of my synthetic clock oil in here, and then lay a little bit of solder over the hole to seal it. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I've been successful at unfreezing this rotor. And to do that, I'm going to put it back into the coil. I have it plugged in, and I think it'll be easier to see if I put the second hand on. Let's prop this up a little bit. It's slipping out of here. And let me turn it on. And how about that? It's working. Very, very good. Okay. So next, I'll put in a bit of the synthetic oil. And just a little bit. You don't want to fill it up. It's just to lubricate the gears. That's really all I need. I'm going to set this up and lay a little bit of solder over it. I'll probably just do that on my own. And when I come back, I'll be ready to continue back to trying to get this hour hand off of here. So let me work on that. I was able to seal up the hole with some solder. And what I want to do next is see if I can remove the hour hand. It's actually been soaking all this time, that little bit of WD-40 I put in there. And hopefully it won't give me a hard time. And it's still kind of snug. Oh, there we go. Very good. Now the dial comes off. What I'm going to do next is open this little housing and access the gears so that I can remove them and clean them and get them lubricated. I just have 4 screws to remove here. Let me start working on that. 3 of them are out. I'm going to remove the last one. Okay. A very simple design here, just a few gears, but I'm going to take a couple of photos of it so I know exactly what goes where before I proceed. It's a very simple design. Let me zoom in and I'll show you. It's just 4 gears here. This is the power interruption indicator. This one is for the set knob. And this one is riveted in place. I can't get that off. I don't see the need to remove this either. But I'm feeling a lot of greasy dirt on all these parts, so I'll get them in the ultrasonic with some hot soapy water. Once everything is cleaned, I'll lubricate it, and then I'll start reassembling everything. Everything is cleaned and lubricated. I'm going to reposition the gears. Next, I have to reseat this plate. And now secure it with the 4 screws. I'll do that, and once that's done, I'll continue. The plate is secure. Now I just have to seat the dial and the hands. Hour hand, the minute hand, and the little lock nut here. Okay. Next, I have to secure the rotor back into the coil and secure it to this plate before putting everything back together. Actually, what I have to do next is place the rotor back into the dial. Then I can slip on the second hand. And now this whole dial needs to be positioned back into the rim and the glass. I've already positioned the glass. Now, it'll probably take me a few minutes to kind of maneuver this down here, so I'll work on that. And once I have it into position, then I'll continue. I managed to maneuver the whole mechanism back into the rim. And the next step is going to be to position the rotor, rather the coil assembly, back over the rotor, and then bring this plate up and over. So let me get to work on that. Let's see how easy this is for me. Okay, this is a definite challenge. Already one of my little spacers fell out. So I'm going to have to work on this on my own. Otherwise it'll take way too long for you to watch. But once everything's back together, then I'll continue. I've got it fully assembled, and as I thought, it took a good 10 minutes to put this back together. One of the problems I ran into, and this is the reason I always say to take photos of these before you take them apart. I was putting these little spacers on the wrong side of the coil assembly, And once I went back and looked at a few photos, I got it right. The next step is to reattach the set knob. And I want to get it tight enough so you can turn it either way. Okay. Now, before putting this back into the case, I'd like to restore the case as much as I possibly can. Considering the fact that this is a 94-year-old clock, the condition of this wood is really pretty good. There's a bit of wear on the finish, some scratches and scuff marks, but I don't think it needs to be sanded down, stripped, and totally refinished. My plan is, with a wood cleaner, clean off whatever dirt is on here, and I have a couple of products that are going to help to restore the finish, as well as the restore the staining of it, blend everything in, as well as improve the look of the finish of it. So let me get to work on that. To clean the wood, I use a product that's meant for wood floors, Bruce's floor cleaner. And I'll always test it on the back of it to make sure it's not going to harm anything, but I'll show you how it works. Just spray a little on. And you can see how much dirt comes off of that. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go over the whole case with this. Once it's nice and clean, I'll show you how I plan to restore it. The case has been cleaned, and the first product I use to go over the finish is something called Howard's Restore Finish. Comes in different shades. This particular one is walnut. And I'll show you how I use it. What you do basically is you wipe it on, and then you wipe it right off. And you can see how well it blends in, all the little scratches and scuffs. Let's see how it does on this area over here. Let's get a bit more here. And it's quite an improvement. Anyway, I'm going to continue going over the whole case, and then once that has dried and set long enough, I'll go over the whole thing with a wax finish to really give it a shine. I've gone over the whole case. I think it's looking much better. And what I use next is a wax polish. It's called Howard's Feed and Wax. And what you do is apply it to a cloth and just go over the whole case. And once the whole case is covered, just let it sit for about 20 minutes or so and then sort of buff it off. So I'm going to work and get it over the whole case. And once it's completed, I'll continue. I've finished waxing the case, and I think it came out looking real nice. And the next step is going to be seat the clock mechanism back into the case. So to do that, what I have to do is secure the ring over these 3 screws with the little nuts that came off of it. And it'll take a couple of minutes to maneuver that and tighten everything up. So I'll do that and then I'll continue. I have the back plate secured. And one thing I had mentioned earlier when I spoke about the power interruption indicator, the little flag here that when it's on is white, and when power is lost it's supposed to flip down to red. And I had it running earlier, and when I would do that, it wasn't flipping from white to red, it just was staying put. And I don't know why that is, but I really don't think it's an issue because the power supply today is a lot more reliable than it was back in the 20s. So the last thing to do is plug the power cord back in. And now I'll set up the clock on my bench over here, plug it in, and we'll see if it still runs. I have it plugged in. Let me turn it on. And it's running. So there you have it, the Telechron Duncan from 1929. I'm really quite pleased with how this one came out. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to check out some of my others, and your questions and comments are always welcome. That pretty much wraps things up. Bye for now.